Hey, what's up everyone? John here with WebDev for you, here to help you build awesome websites without code in Webflow. Today we're going to create a menu animation on click. So here I have the example. When I hover over this menu button, we see it scales, and when I click, the menu pops in. We have these different links that cascade in, so it's kind of a stagger animation. And then we can also see that the menu trigger lines turn into an X when we click. And when we click out, it closes the menu and turns back into two lines. So this is what we will be creating today. It was inspired by this website here, korolev.apocryph.media, where they have this little menu here, and I just thought to recreate it in Webflow. So I think it's a nice menu, can make for a nice menu on a website. It could even be like a side menu thing. It doesn't have to be the main menu, but just something where users can navigate to different pages and things like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This will be fairly quick. I'll move quickly through this just so you can see how I build it. So I'll add a section. We'll call this 158 section. So this is interaction 158. I'll give it a min height of 100 VH. We'll set the flex setting to center. So I'm just gonna place it in the center for now. If you are building a site, you probably want to place it in different places, but for now, just to showcase this, I'll place it in the center. And then I'll add a div block, and we'll call this 158-menu wrapper. And we'll set it to a width and height of 650 by 500. And we'll set the, let's set the display setting to flex. We'll do center and justify right, because we're going to place the menu trigger button on the right. And I'll go ahead and change the background color. Let me just see the border radius here that I set to this. So this does have a border. No, it's to the menu. Okay, so there's the wrapper. And then we want to set the position to relative. All right, so this is going to be the menu wrapper. So the reason I'm adding a menu wrapper is so that I can add the menu and the menu trigger inside of the menu wrapper. So the reason I set it to flex, center, and justify right is so that the menu trigger goes on the right as shown here. So the menu trigger is in a wrapper, and then we have the menu and the trigger inside of the menu wrapper. Okay, so it doesn't need a position of relative. So now I'll go ahead and add, and I'll just show the navigator here on the right. I'll go ahead and add a div block, and this will be the actual menu. So I'll say 158-menu. We'll set it to a position of absolute and full. And let's see, the menu wrapper, oh, I didn't set, let's see, menu. This has to go in the menu wrapper that was in the section. So we have the menu wrapper, then the menu, set to position absolute and full. And let's set the background color. Let's do 1A, nope, that's the font. Let's go to the background, 1A, 1A, 1A. We'll set the radius to 26. Give it a border radius of, or 30, let's do 30. Make it nice and round. So I'm gonna, for this example, I'm gonna do a black background and white text just to vary it a little bit. Because this one is a white background with black text. Okay, so we have the menu. Now we want to add the menu trigger. So I'll add a div block in here, and not in the menu. We want it to be in the menu wrapper. So we see it's on the right because the menu wrapper has a flex setting of center and right. Okay, so for this div block, we're gonna set it to, let's see here. Let me just double check this here. Let's see. The menu button, yeah, it's 75 by 75. So this will be 158 menu button. We'll set the width and height to 75 by 75, and we'll add 40 pixels of margin from the right. And I'm gonna set this to a position of relative, and that looks good. Then in here, we'll add a div block, and we'll call this 158 menu button or menu trigger background. Let's call this instead of menu button, let's call it menu trigger wrapper. Okay, then we have the menu trigger background, and for this I'll set it to let's do white, and actually let's do black, so the same color as the background, 1A, 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 and we'll set the border radius to 50%. And we'll give it a border of white and 3 pixels. And this menu trigger background needs to be absolute and full, so it fills the menu trigger wrapper. Okay, so in the menu trigger wrapper, we also want to add the line. So I'll set the flex setting to flex, center, center, and we'll add those lines in there. So I'll add a div, and we'll call this 158 menu trigger line. We'll set the width to, I believe it's 25. Let me just double check here. Yep, 25 pixels in width and 2 pixels in height. And we'll give the border radius like 100, so it's just a little tiny pill on the side. Let's set the background color to white. And we also want to set the menu trigger line to a position of relative, so it comes in front of the background here. So there we have that little line. Let's go ahead and copy and paste twice. And for the menu trigger wrapper, let's go ahead and set it to vertical and center, center, so that these lines are vertically stacked. And we'll add 2 pixels of margin to the bottom and right for both of these. So we have the menu trigger line, 2 pixels margin top and bottom, 25 by 2 pixels, and a border radius of 100 pixels, and position set to relative. Okay, so we have the menu trigger. Now we want to add the link blocks. So let me go ahead and add a div, and we'll call this 158 links wrapper. So the links will go in here, and this should be inside of, let me just double check, it's inside of the menu, and yeah, that looks right. So link blocks, so menu, yep, and the menu trigger, so menu wrapper set to the right, then we have the menu. Okay, so for the menu, actually, we want to set it to, yeah, so we have the menu wrapper, then we have the menu, and we want to set this to flex, and horizontal, justify center, and align left, or justify start. So align center and justify start. Okay, and I will write this in an article so you can follow along in an article, kind of a quick overview of these steps. And just to be sure, like, of the structure of this interaction, you can look here on the navigator and just look at how I'm building everything. So essentially we have the menu wrapper, then we have the menu inside of the menu wrapper, and it's set to a position of absolute and full, and then it has a flex setting of center left, and we have the menu trigger, which is inside of the menu wrapper, and it's here on the right because the menu wrapper is set to center right, and then we added elements inside of the menu wrapper. So now we're adding elements inside of the menu, which is the links. So that's this left part here. All right, cool. So for the links wrapper, let's go ahead and add those in. So let's see here. So we have the menu. All right, cool. Yeah, so we have the links wrapper. Let's go ahead and add a link block. And let's call this 158 link block wrapper. And in here, we're gonna add some text. So for the link block, let's go right away and remove the underline decoration. So before it's like this, you want it to be the X so it doesn't have an underline, and we'll make the color white. So any text we add in the link block will be white. And let's change the text to DM sans, and we'll make it bold. All right, so in here, we're gonna add a text block, and we're gonna say 158 link number. And for the text, for the link block wrapper, let's also set the text to 20 pixels in height, or 20 pixels in size. We'll do 1 dash for the line height, so it's essentially 100%, and we'll make it all capital. Okay, so that's going to be the text for the link block. So we have 01 for the link number, and for the link number, let's add 60 pixels of margin to the right, and then we'll go back into the link block wrapper. We'll add another text block, and we'll call this 158 link text. And for the link block wrapper, let's set it to a position of flex, horizontal, and align, stretch, and justify left is good. So I'm just going to go back in here, and we're just going to copy some of this text. So we have introduction. And let's give some letter spacing to these as well. So I'm going to do a letter spacing of 1 pixel. So here for letter spacing, just give it a little bit more breathing room to some of this text. All right, so there we have that, and let's go ahead and copy and paste multiple times. So we have 7. So we have introduction, creating style guide, and adding nav bar, adding hero section, and styling global tags. I guess this would be for Webflow video, developing site structure, and adding footer. Cool, and I'll just renumber these. So 01 should be 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, and 07. Awesome. So for the links wrapper, I believe it's the links wrapper. No, it's the menu. Okay, so let's go to the menu and let's add some padding. So I'm going to hold down shift to add padding to all sides. So I'll hold down shift to add 60 pixels of padding. And that looks good. And awesome. And let's go to the link blocks wrapper and we'll add 30 pixels of padding margin to the bottom, like so. Okay, and that looks pretty good. This one, if I want the alignment to be perfect, I might want to maybe add a combo class of, we'll just say 1, and just add a little bit more margin here, maybe 5 pixels, just so the alignment looks a little bit better, because the 01 doesn't have that much width, or X width here. So there we go. So now we have the basic structure of what it should look like, and now all we have to do is add the interaction. So just to recap, I know that was a lot of steps. So we added a section, we added a menu wrapper. Inside the menu wrapper, we added a menu, and we added the menu trigger. Inside of the menu, we added a links wrapper. Inside of the links wrapper, we added 7 link block wrappers, and inside of these wrappers, we added a link number and a link text. And for the menu trigger, we added the background and the 2 lines. All right, cool. So now we just have to create the interaction. So let's go into the menu trigger wrapper right in here. I'll go to interactions. I'll click the plus here. I'll select mouse click or tap. And on first click, we're going to start an animation. I'll click the plus and I'll say 158 menu trigger first click, and we'll start adding the interaction. So let me just go into here and we'll start building it. So initially we want to select the menu. So we'll select the menu and we're going to scale it to 0 on the X and Y. So I'll say 0 and we'll set it as the initial state. The other thing we need to do really quick is for the menu, we need to set the transition here. So I'll click the plus, or no, not the transition, let's see, 2D and 3D transforms. I'll click the plus and not the plus, we'll click on 2D and 3D transforms. So I'll delete this. Now click the 3 dots and we'll set the transform origin to the right. So when it scales from the right. Okay, so now let's go back into the menu trigger wrapper, go back into the interaction, and we'll see that the menu scales in from right to left. Okay, and then I'll select the menu again. We'll say opacity, we'll set the opacity to 0%, and we'll set it as the initial state. So the menu scale and opacity are set as the initial state. And now we want to work with the link block wrapper for each of the 7 elements. So if we look at this interaction, they kind of cascade in. And the way we do that is we move each link block wrapper down 10 pixels. So on the y-axis, we'll say 10. And we'll say selected element because we don't want all of them to animate at the same time. So we'll move it down 10 pixels and we'll set the opacity. So then I'll set the opacity here to 0 as well and set it as the initial state. So the move here should be the initial state as well. So I'm going to copy these 7 times. So I'll duplicate, 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 and duplicate. So for these, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'll select both of these, right click, change target, and I'll select the second one, and I'll just say for these, and I'll do this at the end. Select these two, right click, change target. I'll select the third one. Select these two, right click, change target. Select the fourth one. And let me collapse these so it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll select these, right click, change target. Select number 5. Select these, right click, change target, select 6. Okay, select these down here, right click, change target, and I'll select the 7th. Okay, so now I'll select all these that have the class, and I'll just say, let me see here. Oh, I can't do it all at the same time, so I have to do selected element for all of these. Selected element, selected element, selected element, selected element, and selected element. Okay, so these all should just be targeting the selected link block and not the class. So they can each have unique or individual timing. So then I will set all of these as the initial state, and awesome. So initially the menu scaled to 0 and the opacity is 0%, and the opacity and the movement of each individual link block wrapper is moved down 10 pixels and the opacity of 0%. Awesome. So now what we want to do, and we also, hold on one second. We also want to, I think it's the, we want to animate the menu trigger first. So I'll select the menu trigger line here so that this will be the first animation. Actually, the first animation menu trigger line. So we're gonna move it down 3 pixels on the y-axis, and we'll just say selected element. So just that first line. And the second line, we'll select it and we'll say move, and we'll move it up -3 pixels. And just the selected element, start them together. Then the first one, we're gonna rotate it 45 degrees on the z-axis, and then the second one we're going to rotate it -45 degrees and on the z-axis. Okay, and that creates the X. So let me just start all of these together, and we'll say an easing. So I'll select all 4 of these. We'll say an easing of ease and a duration of 0.2. Let me just double check that. Yep. So now when I click, so let me preview. When I click, it turns into an X. All right, perfect. So now, and let's scale back the menu. So I'll select the menu. We'll say scale. We'll scale it back to 1. And scale it back to 1 with an easing of ease and a duration of 0.2. And then we will set the opacity of the menu. So we'll select opacity, we'll set it to 100%. And we'll start these together. Or we want all this to start together. All right, so let's just make sure the easing here is ease for these two, and duration is 0.2 seconds. All right, looks good. There we go. So that's how we get that pop-in effect. And actually for the scale in, for these two, let me do ease in, out. Cool, perfect. And that looks good. All right, so now let's animate each of these link block wrappers one by one. So I'll select the first one, and we'll say move back to 0, and we'll say opacity back to 100%. Okay, and I'm gonna start these together. And again, I'm gonna duplicate these till I have 7. Okay, and then for this one, I'm gonna right click, change target, select this one, right click, change target, select the third one, right click, change target, select the fourth one, right click, change target, select the fifth one, right click, change target, select the sixth one, right click, change target, and select the seventh one. Okay, and just make sure, yeah, I can hit command on my keyboard to select the first one out of all of them and just say selected element. Okay, cool. So we did that. Now let's start all of these together. So I'm just click holding and dragging and placing on top of each other. And we'll grab all these and start it here. Okay, so now we're going to start with the last one, which is 7, and we'll select the first 2 down here, and we'll add, let's see, the duration should be 0.3, so let's do that now. Select all of them. We'll give it a duration of 0.3 and an easing of ease. And cool, so now they have the same easing. So we'll start at the bottom, and it's going to have, since there's 7, the first link is going to move up 0.1 seconds after, and then it's going to go from 0.1 to 0.7. So I'll start at the bottom so it doesn't change the order. So we'll say delay of 0.7 for those 2, go to the next 2, delay of 0.6, the next 2, delay of 0.5, the next 2, delay of 0.4, the next 2, delay of 0.3, the next 2, delay of 0.2, and the first delay of 0.1. All right, so that should give us that effect of the cascading animations coming in. Looks good. All right, let me see if the scale is a little bit too fast. Nope, duration 0.2, ease in out. Yep, everything else is 0.2. All right, cool. So that's how we get the first animation. Looks good. Now all we have to do for the second click is start an animation. I'll duplicate this and we'll say menu trigger second click. Okay, I'll delete all of these initial states. We don't need them, and then I'll just do everything in reverse. So the menu trigger line, we're gonna move it back to 0 here, and then 0 here. And the rotation, we're gonna move it back to 0 to 0. And the scale, we're gonna move it, set it back to 0. And the opacity, 0 for the menu. And then all of these, we're just going to, let's see, we'll select all the opacities. Let me just double check to see if that's, yep. So all the link blocks, so after that, so let's start after previous action. Okay, so we want the menu to close, and then essentially we're just resetting the links. Okay, so we're not going to see this, so we can select all of these, set the duration to 0, and then for the opacity, we're going to select all the opacities here. I'm just holding down Command, selecting the opacities, and we'll set it to 0. And then for the movement, select all of these and set it to 0. Okay, cool. So essentially we're just closing the menu and then resetting the links after 30.3 seconds, and that's it. Yep, cool. So we open, there we go, close it, perfect. Looks good. All right, so the last thing we're gonna do is just add a little animation to the menu trigger background on hover. So I'll select it, we'll say mouse hover, nope. I'll select the menu trigger wrapper, click plus, I'll say mouse hover, start an animation, click the plus, and I'll say 158, menu trigger hover in. We'll select the menu trigger background, I'll click the plus, say scale, we'll say 1.2. And yep, and then we'll say ease. Let me just make sure I did that correctly. Yeah, we'll say ease, and we'll scale it 1.1. Click save, and then we'll start an animation on hover out, duplicate this, and we'll say menu trigger hover out. And we'll scale it back to 1. Okay, so let me preview. There we go. Needs to be a bit quicker to 0.2 seconds. And save. Coolio. There we go. So we have that little animation. Last thing is we'll add a cursor to this menu trigger wrapper. So we'll go to cursors right down here and we'll say pointer. So that's a little pointer. Perfect. All right, and that's it. So I can just go ahead and publish, and we can link these link blocks out to anything. So I can say https webdevforyou.com, and I'll publish again one more time and preview. And there we go. All right, so hopefully that was clear. I'll do a quick recap and let's just go over the the structure. So we added a section, menu wrapper. Inside of the menu wrapper, we have the menu and the menu trigger here on the right. In the menu, we added a links wrapper right here with the different link blocks. We added a text, and number and text here for each link block wrapper. And in the menu trigger, we added the 2 lines and the background so we can scale the background up and down without affecting the lines here. Then for the menu trigger wrapper, we added a click interaction. And on first click, we scaled the menu down to 0 and opacity to 0. And we moved each link block down 10 pixels with an opacity of 0. We then scaled back in the menu with an opacity of 100%. And we animated the menu trigger lines. We moved them up and down 3 pixels and rotated it 45 degrees to create the X. And then we brought in each link block wrapper individually back to 0 pixels on the y-axis, so it moves up, and we set the opacity back to 100%. And then we added a delay of 0.1 to each link block individually, so we said selected element, and that gave us that staggered effect when we click, so they stagger in. And then on the second click, we removed all the initial states and we just move the the lines on the menu trigger back to 0, so it resets. We rotated it back to 0, so it resets, and then we scaled the menu back to 0, so it resets as well, and the opacity to 0. And after the menu is closed, we reset all the link blocks at the same time to an opacity of 0, and a move of 0. And we also want to remove any delay here because we don't need a delay here. So they all have a 0 delay. Okay, and I'll save that. And then we just added a little hover interaction to the menu trigger as well, where we scaled the menu trigger background up and down. So when we hover, it's a nice little animation. So on hover in, we scaled it 1.1 with an easing of ease and a duration of 0.2. And on hover out, we reset it back to a scale of 1, duration of 0.2, and an easing of ease. And that creates this cool menu. All right, and for mobile, you might be able to get away with it. On mobile, you might just have to make the width of this a bit smaller. I might do something like, for the menu wrapper, just do like 100%, and maybe add some margin to the left and the right. It depends because that button's gonna get a bit close. Yeah, don't love it on mobile. So mobile would probably need a different menu, or moving the button up here on mobile, or making the text smaller and removing some margin. So we could do like, let me select this one. We could do something like 20. And for this one, we'll do 20 as well. And then make the text maybe 14 and 14 here, and something like that. And then we can remove some of the padding on the left and the right, something like 30. And then this button would have to go, so for the menu wrapper, we could set it to the top, and then to the top and center, or oops, top and center. And then we can remove, let's see here, menu trigger, we'll remove the margin here. So something like that, we can add some margin to the bottom, or maybe here. You know, this would definitely need more finesse, but something along those lines. Just trying to move this button down. Menu wrapper, yeah, something like that. Cool. Yeah, we need a bit more finesse here, but hopefully that's kind of clear. Yeah, and it would need to come in from the top. So for the menu, we'd have to change it to the top. So it comes in from the top to the bottom. All right, and then on mobile, on tablet and desktop, it comes in from the left. On mobile, I probably do it for mobile landscape as well. It can come in from the top, something like that, and probably needs to be aligned a bit more to the center. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that was clear. Let me know if you have any questions, but that is interaction number 158, creating this menu, and you can add hover states. So real quick, I can add a hover state to the link block wrapper. So on hover, we can change the text color to anything. So maybe like blue, like bright blue. And we open it. So when we hover, it turns into that color. All right, cool. So yeah, that's it for interaction number 158. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.